Let's now have a look at promotional airfares. Promotional airfares are really quite a different thing to normal fares because they're cheaper. They're the sort of fares that most of us want to travel on, including your customers. So there are a few basic steps I'm just going to go through with you on how to construct a promotional airfare. So we have a look at this itinerary here, Sydney, Honolulu to Sydney, flying on Hawaiian Airlines, departing on the 10th of December, then coming back on the 20th of December. So the first thing you look at is the departure date, because your departure date determines your return seasonal fare. So seasonal. There are generally 3 fare types with seasons for promotional fares. You have peak season, which is designated with an H, shoulder season, which is a K, and basic season, which is L. So with this particular departure date to Honolulu on the 10th of December, I'm just going to assume it would be a high season. So that means my whole journey, Sydney to Honolulu and Sydney to Honolulu, is going to be a return peak airfare. So the next thing we've got to look at is, okay, it's a peak season. What class do we use? When we give you examples throughout your learning resource, we give you this sort of availability display here. What this is showing you, it's taken from a Galileo fare display of what classes of seat are actually available. So Sydney to Honolulu, we've got Y there. Y is full economy. So economy class, there are 7 seats, B class 7, S 7, G, down to K class. The important thing to note here is that the fares on the very end, or the classes at the end, are the cheapest. So K class is the cheapest fare type, coming through up to Y, or economy, which is the more expensive. So if we're looking at this fare here from Sydney to Honolulu, on the outbound, we could quote a peak season in K class. Where do I find those fares? We'll give you fare sheets for the various airlines. In this case, we're using Hawaiian Airlines, so we'd probably give you a net or a promotional fare sheet to Hawaii for Hawaiian Airlines. So on the outbound, we can use K class. On the inbound, coming back home from Honolulu to Sydney, I can't use K class. There are no seats available, so you can't quote a return high season K class fare because there aren't any on the way home. You'd actually have to use S class, this fare here. It's showing there are at least 4 seats still left in S class. So outbound, Sydney to Honolulu, you would look up a return fare in K class and use half of that fare. And on the inbound, you would use, again, it's Sydney to Honolulu, because we look them up in the opposite direction of travel, and you would use S class. It's good to note when you're using promotional fare sheets, you'll probably find that most of these fares are published in Australian dollars, not in NUCs. So quite often we'll just ask you to give us a fare in AUD, but then in others, we will ask you to do it in NUCs. The reason might be because there could be a stopover charge. This journey here, Sydney, Honolulu, Sydney, there's no stopover. Honolulu is our turnaround point. But let's just say we actually went to San Francisco, okay? All of a sudden, Honolulu becomes a stopover and San Francisco is our fare break point. That's fine. We'd still use Hawaiian Airlines. We might have to use a different fare sheet, but we'll tell you which fare sheet to use. So you look up a Sydney to San Francisco fare, but in the rules, you've got to check to see, is that stopover permitted? Generally, you'll find 1 stopover is permitted free, but on some fare types, they may actually charge $100. And if there is a fare charge for a stopover, we would generally get you to put that onto the ticket, and you'll have to show that stopover as a NUC, and you'll put everything else into NUC. But we'll give you plenty of examples on how to do that. So the most basic thing and important thing to remember when you're constructing promotional airfares, which you're going to do to the States, you'll do them to the Southwest Pacific, Asia, UK, Europe, probably even to Africa. They're all going to have very similar sets of rules whereby they're seasonal. The date of departure determines the return seasonal fare, and looking at the availability that we give you to work out what class you can charge your customer or quote to your customer. Because if we tell you there are 0 seats, you can't quote that fare to them. You can use half of one fare type on the outbound and half on the inbound. So good luck with promotional airfares.